Today, we're diving into the Apostle Paul, but maybe not in the way you're used to. We're going to look at an idea, drawn from the work of Dr. Tim Gombis, that for Paul, the gospel wasn't just a list of things to believe. Instead, it was a radical transformation that his entire life started to perform.
So let's start with the big question that Dr. Gombis puts on the table. What if a person's life itself actually became the message? What if the most powerful sermon wasn't spoken, but lived? This is the core idea we're going to unpack, that Paul's life became, in a way, a performance of the gospel.
Now, to really get the after, you have to understand the before. Before he was the Apostle Paul, he was Saul of Tarsus, and this was a guy driven by a really intense, fiery passion. So let's take a look at what that passion was really all about.
Okay, this is super important to get right. When Paul talks about his former life in Judaism, Gombis points out he's not talking about the entire religion as we know it. He means a very specific, zealous subgroup that was all about national purity. You could almost think of it as a kind of passionate nationalism, dead set on scrubbing away any foreign influence to make sure Israel was right with God.
And what did this zeal look like in practice? Well, it was pretty destructive. He wasn't just debating with the first followers of Jesus, he was actively trying to tear down and destroy what he would later realize was the work of God itself. He was ambitious, he was driven, and his passion was aimed squarely at protecting ancestral traditions.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. Dr. Gombis points out how incredibly easy it is to mix up being passionate for God with being passionate for our traditions, our culture, our inherited ways of doing things. And Paul was, Exhibit A.
So, when he looked back on his life, Paul could see his whole mission was basically an attempt to control God's work. He was trying to take this new, wild, unpredictable thing God was doing and shove it back into the old, familiar, culturally pure boxes he understood. He was trying to domesticate a wild God.
But then, everything changed. His life was radically interrupted. And this wasn't just him changing his mind about a few things. No, this was a total and complete reorientation of his entire existence. And it all centered on one single, powerful event.
So when Paul uses the word revelation, Gombis argues we shouldn't think of it like getting new information, like he just got a memo from heaven. It was more like a radical inbreaking, a disruptive, world-shaking event where a totally new reality invaded the old one and just took over.
And get this, here's where it gets really interesting. It's a tiny two-letter word, but it changes everything. Paul doesn't say that God revealed his Son to him. He says God revealed his Son in him. See the difference? To me, sounds like something you see, something external. But in me, that suggests a complete internal takeover. Paul's own life, his own body, became the very place where this revelation was happening. His transformation was the message.
So, what happens after this kind of internal takeover? Well, the results were immediate, and they were dramatic. The man who had been obsessed with policing and purifying borders suddenly became the world's most famous border crosser.
I mean, the change couldn't be more extreme. He goes from this narrow, nationalist mission focused on who's out to a global, international mission focused on bringing everyone in. This wasn't just a career change, it was a total 180-degree flip of his life's purpose.
And you can actually see this reversal in his travel history. Think about it. Right after this massive, life-altering revelation, what's the one place he doesn't go? Jerusalem, the very center of his old world. Instead, he heads off to Arabia, then Damascus. His life just wasn't centered on that single hub of power anymore, because he now realized God's work was happening everywhere.
So, years later, when he finally does go back to Jerusalem, he does it to make a point, and he brings a man named Titus with him. And the key thing about Titus is that he's a Gentile, a non-Jew, and he's uncircumcised, which was the ultimate symbol of being an outsider in Paul's old way of thinking. This was a deliberate test case.
And the confrontation happened almost immediately. A group there started pressuring him, saying, hey, if Titus wants to be one of us, he has to conform, he has to be circumcised. But Paul drew a line in the sand. He refused to give in, not even for a second, because he believed the truth of the gospel itself was on the line. And in the end, the main leaders there sided with him. They affirmed his mission to the non-Jews.
And this gets us right to the heart of it for Paul. For him, unity across ethnic and national lines wasn't just some nice secondary social program. It was the absolute core of the gospel's truth.
If the message didn't create one new multi-ethnic family, then it just wasn't the real message.
Okay, so this is a fascinating story from 2,000 years ago. But the way Dr. Gombis frames it, it's not just ancient history. It's a challenge that is very much alive for us today.
You can really see Paul's transformation as a clash between two completely different ways of living. His old life was run by the rules of the old world. Seeking power, being in control, competition. But this new creation life is defined by the total opposite: service, humility, unity, and finding your identity not in your tribe, but in self-giving love.
So, what can we take away from this look at Paul's story? Well, first, that loyalty to our own institutions can easily become the same kind of trap Paul fell into. Second, the truth of the gospel has everything to do with racial and ethnic unity. Third, a transformed life, a cross-shaped life, is about serving, not controlling. And finally, and this was the one thing everyone in that Jerusalem meeting agreed on, a non-negotiable priority has to be caring for the poor.
And all of this leaves us with a final question to chew on. Paul's life is proof that the power of this message can turn a wall builder into a bridge builder. It transformed a zealous divider into a radical uniter. So the question his story poses to us is this: what walls in our world, and maybe even in our own hearts, is that same gospel calling us to transform today?